By now, I would assume that most people have heard this song, which is Music for a Sushi Restaurant by Harry Styles from his third studio album titled Harry's House, released in 2022. I would also assume that everybody has heard this song, which is Uptown Funk by Bruno Mars and Mark Ronson from Mark Ronson's fourth studio album titled Uptown Special, released in 2015. And lastly, I would assume that most people beyond a certain age, unless they know their stuff, are familiar with this song, which is Jam by Michael Jackson from his 23rd studio album titled Dangerous, released in 1991. So, what do these three songs have in common? The answer is either a coincidence, a ripoff, or homage. Or perhaps a fourth option, which would be none of the above, and it's all in my head. Either way, we're getting to the bottom of it. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Music Kingdom. My name is Francis. If you are a fellow nerd for music, such as myself, click the like button and subscribe to the channel. And of course, since my videos are not monetized, if you would like to support the hard work I put into them, you'll find a link to my tip jar and commissions, which are now open, in the description and comments below. Alright, so if we're talking about the history of music, or I suppose music history, it is not uncommon when two songs, whether from the same time period or decades apart, sound like each other, or are similar in some way. For example, take He's So Fine and My Sweet Lord. In many cases, it is as simple as pure coincidence. In other cases, it's a tipping of the hat or homage. In some rare instances, it is a blatant ripoff that goes to court. And I suppose in other instances, it depends on who you ask. Someone might say those two songs sound entirely different. I do not know what you're talking about. And someone else might say, how do you not hear the similarities? So regardless of how it may look specifically, that has always been a thing in music to some extent. Now, regarding the three songs we are comparing today, I do want to make it clear. Each song in its entirety is different from the other. They are each most certainly their own thing. However, one might argue, and one being myself, I would argue the catchiest part of each one specifically is eerily similar to the other. Now, it's not for me to say with any legitimate certainty whether it is coincidence, a ripoff, paying homage, or perhaps a total nothing burger, because again, it might just be in my head. So with it being my job to simply demonstrate, I am going to ask you guys to let me know what you think in the comments below. And then after that, for an even closer examination, we'll go to the expert's corner for him to break them down each, ultimately getting his compositional input, and then arriving at a final verdict that is as close to definitive as possible. I figure we'll start with the newest and then go back in time to the oldest, and then from the oldest back to the newest so you can hear them again.
Just watch. Come on. Don't believe me, just watch. Don't believe me, just watch. Don't believe me, just watch.
See what I mean? Are they literally identical? No. But are they similar enough to each other to the point where it makes you go, In my opinion, yes. But again, is it coincidence? Is it a pure ripoff job? Is it paying homage? Or am I batshit crazy? This is why we have an expert. So let's have him break down the 3 similarities between each song and deliver us his own final verdict.
Welcome to the Experts Corner. Today I'm going to be dissecting these 3 songs and finding out, are they really that similar to each other on a compositional level? Now obviously on an overall kind of macro level, they remind me of each other. But let's look into their composition and see if there's anything to it. So let's start with Michael Jackson's Jam, which is in the key of D minor. Now the chord progression you've got going on underneath the horn line is D minor 7, G major. There's some swagger in those chords. And with the horn line, it sounds something like this. So let's compare that to Uptown Funk, and I bring up that one next because it is so similar in that part to Michael Jackson's Jam. It's even in the same key, and the chords are almost the same. It starts on D minor 7, just like Jam, then it goes down to D minor 6, which is pretty close to G major, at least on a keyboard, is only 1 note different. And with the horn line and the groove, you could fool a lot of people into thinking it is exactly the same chords. So with the horns, we've got so Jam and Uptown Funk, they're about the same tempo, they have a very similar groove. The horn line is not identical, but it's similar enough. And as I said, the chords are almost the same, it's in the same key. And then we go into Music for a Sushi Restaurant, which is really the most different of the 3. Compositionally, it bears little resemblance to the other 2 at all. So if you've been watching this channel from the early days, you'll know this was one of the first songs we ever reviewed. And I talked about what a unique, cool, almost strange chord progression it has with F sharp dominant 7, E dominant 7, E flat dominant 7, D major. The only real similarities here is the fact that there is a horn line, but besides that, there's really nothing similar. It's at a much slower tempo, the chords are completely different, and to me it just isn't quite as high energy. I'm not used to ending these without giving a score. But I will say, in conclusion, Jam and Uptown Funk, super similar, probably homage. Music for a Sushi Restaurant? No, it's pretty different. Maybe Harry had a little bit of influence from Jam or Uptown Funk. Maybe he just wanted to create the same vibe, because the vibe is there, just fun party, but musically not the same. Back to you, Francis.
A very special thank you to our expert for breaking down each of the 3 songs and delivering his final verdict. On one hand, I feel validated, and on the other hand, still perhaps a bit crazy. As you can see, Music for a Sushi Restaurant is perhaps the biggest stretch of the 3. To some people, probably similar enough to Uptown Funk, and then to other people, such as myself, undoubtedly similar to Uptown Funk, which we've hopefully done a good enough job in establishing is eerily similar to Michael Jackson's Jam. Now, personally, I'm not really the biggest Bruno Mars guy. I mean, I know a handful of songs by name, so I'm not going to pretend to know all kinds of things about him, but what I do know is that he still is, but more importantly was, a huge fan of Michael Jackson to the extent of impersonating him as well. So, with Sushi Restaurant and Uptown Funk, it's safe to eliminate any ripping off and chalking it up to coincidental or perhaps influenced by. But in the case of Uptown Funk and Jam, I still would eliminate ripping off knowing that Bruno Mars is a fan of Michael Jackson. However, I think chalking that one up to coincidence is a bit of a stretch as well, with the obvious answer, in my opinion, being blatant tipping of the hat and homage to one of his favorite artists. Either way, subjectively speaking, while I'm not super into Harry Styles or super into Bruno Mars, I can still wholeheartedly appreciate the usage of those horn licks, how tastefully executed that familiar melody is, regardless of whether or not it is homage or coincidence. In my personal opinion, there is only one original, which is Michael Jackson, evidently and literally creating something timeless. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed, and again, let me know what you think in the comments below. What's your final verdict? Coincidence? Homage? A total nothing burger? Is Is this all in my head? In addition, let me know as well what else you would like to see from this channel. What else would you like to see compared? As mentioned, if you are a fellow nerd for music, such as myself, click the like button and subscribe to the channel. And of course, if you'd like to support the hard work I put into my videos, you'll find a link to a tip jar and commissions, which are now open, in the description and comments below. This has been another edition of Music Kingdom. Thank you so much for listening with me, and I'll look forward to jamming with you in the next one.